All right, we good? All right, good morning, everyone. Let's go ahead and get started. Welcome. This is Server Tools 101, Introduction to Tableau Server Tools. My name is Justin Mang. I'm a developer at Tableau on the Customer Data Platform team.
And I'm Rahul Motwani. I'm a product manager on the same team.
All right, and today we're going to be talking a little bit about some of the freely available tools that Tableau has built and released to the public that can help you with administration of your Tableau server. We wanted to call this session Tool Time originally and dress up in the spirit of the season, but unfortunately Tableau shot it down. So just to quickly highlight our agenda for today, we're going to talk a little bit about why Tableau has built and released these tools. We're going to go into the support levels for using these tools, and then we're going to do a survey of 5 different tools conforming to the themes of performance evaluation and monitoring, log analysis and troubleshooting, and perceived performance and error validation. So the first question is, why Tableau tools? So at Tableau, we understand that this is a really complex product and all of you use it differently, and you all have different needs as far as security and governance. We really wanted to release these to the public because these are all tools that we've had to build for internal purposes, and we figure, why not share them? You can benefit, so we want to help you. As server admins, as many of you are, you have a pretty tough job and you can use all the tools you can get. So we really, in the spirit of Tableau, we want to enable self-service and analysis of any issues on your server, as well as empower you to run it better. I know I personally hate calling tech support. It's my least favorite thing I ever have to do on a given day. So anytime I have the chance to dig in a bit and troubleshoot things on my own, I'm happy to do that, and I'm sure many of you feel the same way. And finally, we feel that a lot of these tools serve as creative examples of using our product and really showcase the power of data in Tableau. Just a quick note, we're going to be showing a lot of links today. We don't expect you to remember all of these or take pictures. We have a handout up at the front that you're welcome to grab on your way out that has an overview of each tool we're talking about, as well as all of these links. We've also just released an enterprise IT tools page on Tableau's website where you can go to get a lot of summaries. There are descriptions of what tools do different things, and so on and so forth. So that's a great resource as well. So the support for these tools fall into roughly 2 buckets. There is community-supported tools, and that includes all the things we're talking about today, where we have Tableau development actively monitoring the forums, as well as GitHub in some cases for customer help requests or bug reports. And we will watch those resources and jump on and help you out to the best of our ability. Then there are Tableau-supported tools, which are tools that are officially supported by our tech support organization. That includes a lot of the kind of SDK-oriented tools like the Web Data Connector toolkit. For more information about these levels of support, if you need that before making a decision on using one of these, there's a great web page you can check out up on the screen. Finally, the last kind of resource I'd like to highlight is the Server and Online Admin Community Forum. If you ever need help with tools, that's a great place to go. If you want to know the right tool for the job, go on there. There's a lot of friendly users and Tableau employees who will help you out. Cool. So as I mentioned, we're going to talk about 5 different tools. This is intended to be an introduction and a survey, just so you kind of know what's out there. Most of the tools we're talking about today do have more intermediate 200 level sessions. So if you search Server Tools 200 in the TC17 app, you can find those. And I'll put up those session times at the end. But the first 2 tools I want to talk about are related to performance evaluation and monitoring. So we're going to talk about TabMon and Tabjolt. All right, so TabMon. TabMon is basically like a Fitbit for your Tableau server. It just kind of runs in the background, and it monitors your server deployment, and it gathers metrics about performance, namely kind of the core 4 performance indicators: CPU, memory, disk utilization, and network I/O. It also gathers data from the Tableau Server JMX counters. So that's kind of a mouthful to say, but it's basically the internal product counters that Tableau Server exposes out of the box, and that has some more application-specific metrics related to things like viz loading, querying, background jobs. There's really a lot of rich data in there that is normally hard to get out. TabMon can help you with that. So really the benefits to you using TabMon are to get an ongoing high-level bird's-eye view of the performance on your Tableau Server install. It can help with capacity planning questions and scalability. TabMon can also be used to monitor for service outages. So just a quick visual on kind of where TabMon fits into your deployment. So TabMon is generally installed on a machine outside of your server deployment. You do some configuration to point it to your various server nodes, and then at that point, you let it run. It comes with a database where it stores its results. You can also configure it to dump out to CSV if you prefer to not have to meddle with another database. But yeah, once you get it all set up, you pretty much just leave it running, and on an ongoing basis, it will query each of your Tableau Server nodes for performance metrics and persist those out to the database. It does come with a sample workbook to get you started with some examples of how to use the data. But as with all things Tableau, we encourage you to really get in and explore the data source on your own and ask new questions. And my presentation says, oops, I might need help. Please let an attendant know. Can I just close this? Okay, that was fun. All right, so there's a few prerequisites I wanted to cover for using TabMon. Currently, it only supports Windows, so you'll need a Windows PC. A VM is fine for this. You'll need a Tableau Server 9X or later. I'm guessing probably mostly everyone is on that by now already, hopefully. And you'll need a Postgres database, as I mentioned. This should be a separate database from your Tableau Server repository. Please do not point any of the tools we talked about today at your server repository. No good things can come of that. This tool is freely available on GitHub. It's been released as an open source project under the MIT license. You can find it on the TabMon GitHub releases page. Alongside that release page is a really great user guide that covers all of the configuration as well as usage of the tool. The level of support on this is a community-supported tool. So we ask that if you discover any bugs or have any feature requests or just want help getting set up, post an issue on the GitHub issues forum and we'll jump on there and help you out. Cool, so we've talked a lot about what TabMon is. As I've mentioned, this comes with a sample workbook. So I just wanted to show you some of the dashboards that come in that workbook because I think that gives you a better idea of what TabMon is. So let's suppose we have a scenario where our users are complaining that every day, sometime around noon, Tableau Server gets really slow and their visits are loading slowly. So the joke around the office is Tableau Server is going out to lunch. So as the server admin, I could dive into my TabMon data and begin to try to investigate why this is happening. So I'll just switch here. All right, so these are a few dashboards out of the TabMon workbook. We're going to start by looking at memory. So as we can see, after we've narrowed down to the time interval reported by our users, we see that as we'd expect, sometime around noon, like our system just starts to run out of memory. And eventually it bottoms out where we have no available memory. And at that point, our system starts paging information to disk and things get really slow. So this is kind of an overview of memory utilization, but we can actually drill down a level deeper. So this viz shows the memory utilization by process. Forgive me that this color palette looks a little bit like I sprayed silly string all over the screen, but there's some interesting things here. We see these orange lines here kind of creeping up, and then about at the reported user time, they just explode, and they cap out on memory. And we see that it's actually a pair of data server processes. At about just afterwards, we also see TDE, or Tableau Data Engine, the process that powers extracts, also caps out on memory. So it seems like we have an issue where at this time, we have data server and TDE consuming a bunch of memory. So as an admin, having taken some architecture courses, I start to think, well, okay, maybe this is an extract refresh problem. I want to do due diligence here and look at some of the other metrics available to me. So I take a peek at the CPU utilization, and I notice things are generally pretty quiet. We do see a big spike in CPU utilization, but it's actually after the reported time frame of the incident, so it could be unrelated, and it goes away pretty quickly. If I break down the CPU utilization by service, though, I see something interesting during the time frame that I'm looking at, that noon time frame. And that's that I see TDE server kind of plateauing out at 100% utilization of the core that it's running on. And it stays that way for about 45 minutes. And at one point, it even spikes a little higher. So again, this kind of confirms the idea that this could be a refresh extract running that's consuming a lot of our resources. I can also look at the storage disk I/O on my cluster, and I see that kind of just after the reported time frame, I have a huge burst of write activity. And at one point, this caps out at over 300 megs a second that my disk is writing out. Again, we're probably writing an extract. So I see things are queuing up, and I also see that my server has plenty of free space. So this shouldn't be a disk space issue. And the final TabMon dashboard I wanted to show is kind of a blend of a couple things. So on the top view, we see the TabMon processor utilization dashboard that we were just looking at. But on the bottom half of this viz, we've actually blended the TabMon data along with the Tableau Server repository data, which has a lot of juicy information about how users are using our server and some historic data tables that we can work from. So what's cool here is I can actually highlight the time of my incident, and out of repository, we'll pull a whole bunch of user interactions that happened at that time. So logins and logouts we don't really care about. We see some viz loads, we see some data source access, but confirming our suspicions, we see that at 12:24 p.m. there was a refresh extract job that ran. If I click on that, I can see that the extract name was TC17. And as an admin, I now have an important clue that I could go to use to try to remedy this. So one thing I could do would be to schedule this extract refresh for a different time, maybe run it in the middle of the night. I could also look at switching this to an incremental extract. All right, so hopefully that's a good quick view of TabMon for you. Now we're going to kind of switch gears a little bit and talk about Tabjolt. So if TabMon was the Fitbit for our server, Tabjolt is the treadmill. It's a synthetic load testing tool. If you've ever used something like LoadRunner or JMeter, this is analogous to that. And the idea is to simulate user load and user interactions with your vizes in order to basically stress test your server. Don't do this against prod unless you really have to. This is intended for use with pre-production environments as part of you vetting a build prior to deploying it to your production server. So it's extremely powerful. It's very configurable. You can configure your load test scenario exactly how you want it with the named users you want and the vizes you want it to load. And it'll go through and simulate that load, and it knows how to interact with your filters and parameters. So as far as the benefit to you, this is a great tool, as I mentioned, for validating new versions of Tableau Server and making sure they don't tank your performance before deploying it to prod. It can also help you identify performance bottlenecks and errors within your deployment, and overall is just a great tool for sizing and capacity planning. So the kind of topology view of Tabjolt, you have one or more Tabjolt load generators, which can be installed on separate VMs. In general, unless you're testing a really large deployment, I've only ever needed one. But similar to TabMon, it persists all of its results in a test result database. And you basically just configure it to point to the gateway on each of your Tableau nodes, and then let it rip. And it will run the test, store out any errors as well as performance metrics during the test duration, and store that all out for you for easy visualization in Tableau. The requirements and setup instructions are pretty congruent with TabMon. You'll need a Windows PC, you'll need Java 64-bit, and you'll need a Tableau Server, of course, and a Postgres database, which is included in the installer. You also download Tabjolt from GitHub, which is also where you can find the installation guide for it. In addition to the install guide, the Tabjolt team has done a really awesome job of recording some training videos that can help you get started setting it up as well as analyzing the results, which is really the most important part. As with TabMon, Tabjolt is a community-supported tool, and if you need help with that, please let the Tabjolt team know via the community forum. So again, Tabjolt comes with a sample workbook, which I'd like to show just a couple dashboards from. So after you run a test, your landing page in this workbook is going to be this key performance indicators dashboard. This is basically a high-level summary of what happened during the test run. You can see that we ran a test with 5 virtual users for 20 minutes, and the resulting error rate was really low, so we're happy about that. And we could see that the average response time was about 1,200 milliseconds. Now, what's really cool about this workbook is that say I made a tuning change or changed a config setting or tried adding another VizQL server process and rerunning the test again, I actually can compare these two tests right in the workbook. So I see that my new test with my changed configuration actually ran with, in general, a little bit lower response time, which makes us really excited as server admins. The throughput, because the response time is lower, the throughput was higher. We were able to load more views. And the error rate was exactly the same. So we didn't introduce any functional regressions with our tuning change. If we had introduced some errors, Tabjolt includes a dashboard for kind of digging into what happened. So in the middle here, we see every error that occurred during the process of testing a view. And if I click on one of these, I can drill down and actually see exactly what happened. So in this case, my server threw a 500 when loading this view. And that could be something that I could go investigate in the workbook. All right, so at this point, I'd like to turn it over to Rahul to talk about our next theme, which is log analysis and troubleshooting. Thanks, Rahul.
Thanks, Justin. Hi, everyone. So I want to do a quick poll. How many of you in this room are Tableau Server admins? Okay. Next question. How many of you in this room, when you encounter an error with Tableau, would kind of hesitate or would like to self-serve this problem without having to contact Tableau technical support? Okay, I figured as much. So this is in line with what we thought, and so that was the whole impetus behind this talk. And so we wanted to give you a bunch of tool sets that you as Tableau Server admins can take back and kind of self-service some of these issues that you're seeing. So with that, let's move to the next category, which is log analysis and troubleshooting. And I want to introduce to you Logshark. So picture this scenario. You happen to be the admin of a Tableau Server installation in the healthcare or the financial sector. Now, we all know that this sector has some strict data governance, as well as requirements on when customer data can or cannot be shared outside of your installation. So if you happen to run into an issue where, say, your boss's viz is not loading, and you've kind of exhausted all your troubleshooting steps, you really can't contact Tableau technical support because the first thing they're going to do is ask you for logs, and you cannot share logs with them. So you're sort of caught in between like a hard place and a rock now. So what do you do then? that's where kind of Logshark can come to your rescue. So what is Logshark? It's basically a tool that extracts data from your log files using this concept of plugins. We have a couple of plugins, one for every component of the server. So as an example, we have an Apache plugin that works on the Apache logs. We have a backgrounder plugin that works on the backgrounder component. Think of plugins as sort of filters that extract the relevant event information from the log files. And then what we do with this is we write it out to a Postgres data source and build these really rich Tableau workbooks from that Postgres data source so that you can visually see and analyze your log files, which makes it much easier. So you can use it to troubleshoot error conditions, performance bottlenecks, you name it. So some of the advantages or how it can really benefit you, the first one I kind of already alluded to is if you happen to be in an industry or in a sector or just your corporate policy requires you to not share information outside of your domain, then this can be a tool that can really help you alleviate some of that concerns. Kind of self-service some of those quick issues by just looking at those workbooks. The second one is just anything that you see as a problem in the logs. This gives you a really visual way of analyzing that data in a workbook. And the third one is around the upgrade testing. We do this very often, almost every release internally at Tableau. The way you would work it out is, you have, say, Tableau on version 10.0. You run your typical user workload on that server instance. You gather the logs from that day, run that through Logshark, and generate like set A of the workbooks. You then upgrade that server to, say, 10.3. Run the exact same workload on that server instance. Put those, gather the logs and run that through Logshark and generate workbook, the work set B. And then you kind of do a compare and contrast of A versus B to kind of highlight, do some trend analysis, see if there are additional errors that are creeping up due to the upgrade. Is performance really going up or going down? And what are the tweaks that you really need to make when you will have to upgrade to the next version? It kind of gives you a good compare and contrast. So that's another scenario where Logshark is really beneficial. What are the prerequisites for this tool? So like most of the other tools, it is based only on the Windows platform right now. It is required to have Tableau Server 9.0 and higher. You need a Postgres and a Mongo database. We do include a local Mongo database, but again, the advice over there to you guys is if you're going to be crunching logs through Logshark that are greater than 2 gigabytes, the local Mongo database might not be the most optimal. So in that case, we request or we require you to kind of set up a separate Mongo database instance just to kind of help with the faster processing of the logs. Where is it available? So Logshark is available on GitHub. Right before TC, we just released version 2 of Logshark, so it has all the latest and greatest bits that we use internally within Tableau. You have that available to you. And just a note, even for TabMon, we made a release just last week. It's version 1.2, so even that's all bright and shiny and new for you to use. There is a really extensive setup and installation guide that kind of walks you through how to set up Mongo, Postgres, how to make all the config settings to make it all work. And it's pretty extensive. So I highly recommend you kind of review that first before you set up your installation to make sure you're going to get it set up correctly. The level of support for this tool, like all the other tools, it is community supported. We actively watch the server and online forum, as well as the GitHub issues site. And we will try to unblock you and get you set up as quickly as possible. So don't hesitate to reach out. With that, I kind of wanted to walk you through a couple of the workbooks that are generated by Logshark. OK, so the first workbook I wanted to show you was this is the Apache plugin. The Apache plugin basically tracks all the users' HTTP traffic between the Tableau server. And it also highlights, and down below, I'll show that later, but it also shows you like the request times for each of your Bootstrap session requests. So what you're seeing here on this Wiz over here is on the top, you're seeing like the workbooks on your Tableau Server installation that are requested the most. So you know exactly where the traffic is going. On your right-hand side over here, you're seeing the time it took for each of those Bootstrap session requests. And when you hover above each of these data points on the Wiz, it really loads up some rich information where you can actually see the request, the timestamp, how long it took to run the request, the workbook and the worksheet in question, as well as some metadata from the logs around the request ID and session ID. This is really valuable because you can look at this workbook, identify some of the requests that are taking really long to execute, and then deep dive into the logs itself based on the request ID and session ID. So it really helps you narrow down your scope of investigation to the time of concern, rather than kind of like needle in a haystack. So I really like that about it. The other graph that I wanted to show you, which is right below over here, is it also shows you like the HTTP error codes for each of your requests. So at a very high level, you can kind of see where are the 400s happening, where are the 500s happening. So as an admin, it really gives you a quick overview if there are particular timestamps or time durations or intervals where you happen to see a lot of red, then that may be something that you need to start investigating. Another flavor of this workbook, which is based off the same data from the Apache plugin, I really like this one, is kind of like it's a request performance heat map. And what this is basically showing you is, you select a particular request category. Over here, we've set the Bootstrap sessions. And on the right-hand side, you set the threshold over there. What this really helps you identify at a very high level is, what are the sessions and at what particular time intervals do those sessions exceed the threshold that you're setting? And then you can quickly start seeing the reds show up, and maybe those are the timestamps that you need to start your investigation, especially if you're seeing performance bottlenecks around certain periods of time in the day. So that's one. And you can select the dropdown for the request category and select other categories and then set thresholds based on what you want to do. The next plugin I wanted to show you a quick output of, this is the Server Resource Manager plugin. Server Resource Manager was introduced in Tableau Server 9.2 and higher, so this works in 9.2 and higher. Server Resource Management can be configured in the admin settings, and it also gives you an option to set threshold for the various resources that you have. So what we're seeing here in this graph is basically the entire CPU utilization as well as the memory utilization across all the cores and your workers of the Tableau server. So as an admin, when I come to this view, it's really easy for me to tell, especially when I'm doing some sort of capacity planning or upgrade, I want to know like what would I need to upgrade to the next version. I can quickly identify like, hey, maybe I need more CPU cores or I need more memory because the current installation is really choking at that. And then below, you kind of see some of the processes that were terminated by Server Resource Manager. So this is, again, based on the thresholds that you set in the admin setting. If we see that it's exceeded that threshold, then we go ahead and terminate those processes. So when you hover above this, it kind of tells you, like, oh, the background process was terminated because it exceeded the threshold that you set. So this, again, may help you start the investigation process when you're seeing some of those performance bottlenecks. So again, that was a really high-level overview of Logshark. Like I said, these are only 2 of the plugins that we ship. There are around 10 or 11 plugins that are there, one for every component of Tableau Server. Again, this is an open source tool set, and these are the plugins that we have come up with that we think are going to be beneficial for our users. But it is a community-supported tool, and we really look out to the community to contribute to this open source project or give us feedback on which plugins work for you, which plugins don't work for you, and what are the other plugins that maybe are beneficial to you that you can write and then contribute to the open source project so that the other Tableau Server admins can also benefit from that. So I'll switch back real quick. Cool. The next tool I wanted to move over to is Tableau Log Viewer. So again, I'll paint a scenario for you. You've run into an issue with Tableau, and you need to download logs in order to investigate the issue. Now, God forbid you happen to be a Tableau Server admin and it's a Tableau Server issue, you probably are pulling down gigs of logs. And I don't know about you, but looking at log files in a text viewer like Notepad just doesn't do it for me. Like, it's just brutal. So if you happen to be in that situation where you do not like that scenario, then Tableau Log Viewer is a tool that you should be using. It's a great tool. It's a cross-platform tool that is supported on the Windows, Mac, as well as the Linux platform now, with Tableau Server coming out on Linux. And what it basically does is it lets you view all of your log files in an easy-to-consume tabular format. I'll show you a quick demo of the tool, but that's basically what it is. What I also like about this tool is that it lets you search for specific events. It lets you highlight them. It also has this nifty new feature, or new, but nifty feature that lets you load the log file live as it's happening. So it sort of, and I'm squinting when I say this, is it kind of lets you do a little bit of like real-time monitoring of your installation. Another good thing is it has this functionality called, it has a query visualizer built in. So when you're investigating some of the performance issues and you know it's probably related to queries, this tool lets you see those queries itself in the viewer, as well as it lets you visualize it. So it can be a really useful tool when you want to kind of optimize those workbooks that are causing timeouts. So some of the benefits, it lets you troubleshoot issues in the logs. You can tune some of those queries in your workbooks based on the information that is surfaced up via this tool. The target audience is anyone who's ever troubleshooting anything with Tableau. This is a tool that you can use. So it's not only for server admins, but any other Tableau user as well that has access to logs. Like I said, it is cross-platform, so it's available across all three. Available currently on GitHub. It has a great wiki that can kind of give you some of an overview of all the functionality that I'm talking about. Like all the other tools, it is community supported. The forums are being actively watched by members of the Tableau development community. So if you have any issues, just post it there and we'll respond to it. Okay, with that. So this is the UI for the Tableau Log Viewer. As you can see on the top, I can do a live capture, the live mode, so it'll connect to the log file for desktop and you can view it. It also supports all the beta releases of Tableau, so you can view the beta files as well. You can search and highlight, so over here if I search for, sorry, it's a begin query. If I want to highlight all the begin query events in my log, it really lets you do that. Let's see, there's no other. Find that hard to believe. Okay. If I double-click on this, it actually shows you in a really easy-to-consume format what the query was. It has a great search capability, so I'm going to do. So this is showing you the end query event, and it also tells you how long the query took to execute. It shows you the exact query that was executed, as well as the number of rows that were returned. This particular log file that I have doesn't have a particular event that I'm looking for that can show you the visualized query, but it's called the query plan event. And if you happen to search for that query plan event in the log viewer, and you double-click on that event, the Visualize Query button lights up, and when you click on it, it shows you like a hierarchy of the exact query that was executed. And so it's really useful when you're troubleshooting issues with workbooks that are really slow, and it's the query that's causing the slowness. It lets you visualize the hierarchy of the query. Yep. So I think that was all I wanted to show with the log viewer. It lets you open multiple files, so you can keep opening multiple files. It'll just create them as tabs. The question was, does it let you just view one file, or can you view multiple files? You can. Cool. The last category of tools that we wanted to hit, these were on perceived performance and error validation. So I have another scenario for you, because I love scenarios and stories. You're the Tableau Server admin, and you have a data analyst on your team that's really pestering you to move to 10.5 beta because it has viz and tooltips, and he really wants it. But you have to balance that request against your boss, again, who has these vizes that he has for like an executive review the next morning, and you want to make sure that none of those vizes are broken when you upgrade to the latest beta or to the latest version of Tableau. So what do you do there? Like, how do you assuage concerns and requests from your team to upgrade to the latest version of Tableau, at the same time ensuring that none of the existing vizes or data sources are broken as a part of that process? Well, you're in luck, because Scout is such a tool that can help you achieve all of that. At its core, Scout is an exploratory testing tool that lets you interact with both Tableau desktop and server, and it helps you record key performance metrics against some of these interactions that you have across a specified set of workbooks. So what it basically does is, this is how you would envision using it. The same scenario, you have a pre-production environment that's set up with, say, Tableau Server 10.2. You would load Scout onto it, specify how much load you want to run on it, and specify the workbooks that you want it to execute. Gather the logs and generate the workbooks from Scout itself. You would then upgrade it to the latest version, and then run Scout again, and do a compare and contrast of, did the workbooks load? Did it not load? For each of the workbooks, how did the performance improve or degrade based on those runs? So there are a couple of advantages or a couple of scenarios where Scout is really beneficial. The first is verifying the category of user acceptance testing. So you can verify, for a set of workbooks that were loading on my previous server, are they actually loading on when I upgrade my server to the next version? As well as if I make data source changes, how is that affecting each of these workbooks? Are they still loading, or are they now failing because I made some data source changes? So that's the category of user acceptance testing. The next one is performance testing. This is where you do a compare and contrast of are these workbooks loading faster or slower on the upgraded version, as well as if I make some config changes. So this might happen often when you contact Tableau technical support. They might ask you to say, hey, can you tweak this one server admin setting? Or can you do X? So in those scenarios, you may want to tweak the setting on your pre-production environment and do like a A/B test, before the config setting was changed, load all the workbooks and see how it performed. Make the config setting change, and then run all the same workbooks again, and see did the needle really move based on that config setting. So it kind of gives you a little bit of a confidence booster, or confidence level increase based on what you determine on that A/B comparison. So what are the requirements for Scout? Again, on the Windows platform, works on Tableau Server 10.0 and higher. Does require you to have the latest version of Google Chrome, because that's what it uses to run the user acceptance tests. It does require the Java 64-bit virtual machine. And then you also need to enable the web client metrics on your server so that it can capture some of the performance metrics. It is available on the community site for download. It has a good user guide as well that can help you get set up and started. The Scout team has also made available a quick getting started video that you can view. Like all the other tools, it is community supported. So post to the forums or the server and online community site, and we will try to respond to you. Because I'm presenting on a Mac machine, I couldn't load the Scout UI for you on the Mac, so we'll have to resort to this UI that I captured on the screen. I'll try to quickly walk you through some of the settings that I think are interesting. Oops. So over here, you can see in the, you can specify to work against server as well as desktop. On the server, you basically specify what the URL for the server is. And most of you will probably be in this bucket where you're going to be on-premise. You can also target a specific site ID or a project name if that's the site you want to just test on. For the workbooks that you want to load, you can either say you want to view them alphabetically, take the top 100, or the better setting probably to use is what are the most viewed workbooks in your environment. You probably want to take the top, you determine 25, 50, or 100, and run that through the test. It also has this option of specifying URL. So if you have a URL list, you can probably load that in, and it'll do that. You can specify the interaction mode, whether you want it to perform authoring or viewing. We recommend maybe starting with viewing, because that seems to be one of the most commonly used actions. This setting about allows server execution without perf instrumentation, this would be unchecked only when you're using Scout to do the user acceptance testing that I mentioned, where you're just concerned about whether the vizzes are loading. But if you want to do some of the performance testing, then I would enable that option, because that's the one that collects the perf metrics. You probably want to save the option of saving the server logs, so you can, if you do run into issues, you can investigate those with Logshark or TabMon or one of the other tools that was highlighted. The desktop settings are minimized, but basically what in the desktop settings, you just specify the URL to the Tableau executable. This is showing you all the possible interactions that are possible on the server, and then the iterations, so how many times do you want it to load the same workbook and perform the iterations. We would recommend anything greater than 1 of a sample size, because I would say between 3 to 5 is a good count. Because you don't want to have you want to kind of rule out the outliers. So if you have 3 to 5 iterations, then if you have one that's like crazy high, suppose it takes like 300 milliseconds for a workbook to load, but the other iterations show you that the workbook's loading in around 100 milliseconds, then you probably want to eliminate that sample set and just concentrate on the remaining. And I would recommend turning this option on for saving screenshots, because I'll show you some of the workbooks. It actually has a link to the screenshots for like run A versus run B. So by looking at the screenshots, it can really help you visually see the comparison and contrast. So with that, I'll show you 2 of the workbooks that are generated by Scout. So the first one is kind of like a summary dashboard. And what this is showing you is for each of the, like I said, there are different interactions that you can perform on the server. So say for the server load viz interaction, so this is when the initial viz is loaded. What are the slowest worksheets for that particular interaction? So you can quickly identify, what are the worksheets that are going to be a problem. When you hover above this, it actually shows you the workbook name and worksheet name. And this is interesting, when you click on this data point over here, it actually shows, you can click and to go into interactions by workbook. And this is where you see, the number of iterations that I'd specified. I'd probably said I wanted to run it for 3 iterations. And you can see that it's consistently so slow across all those 3 iterations. So this is not an outlier. It is pretty consistent. So it gives me some confidence that probably this is the one that I want to start my investigation with. The next dashboard that I wanted to show you was the A/B testing scenario. So this is where it's right now showing you workbooks across the Tableau Server installation. Here are the workbooks that had the worst performance, like they degraded the most. And as you go down, it's showing you the ones that kind of actually did better when you went from version 1 to version 2. So this is a great high-level overview to have as an admin to start, determining if, is this something that you need to investigate or not? Because, there are some workbooks that are really, really slow, but then there are some that are really doing not that bad. So maybe pick a couple from the slow and see if there's something specific in that around, I don't know, extract refreshes or something else that's causing the slowness when you upgrade. The last one that I want to show you, so again, this is another workbook of the same dashboard. And this is where you can do the A/B comparison. So it's showing you the number of errors in run A versus the number of errors in run B. The one in red are probably the ones that you want to start investigating. And this is basically where it lets you have, or shows you the screenshots. Apologies, I'm not going to load that link because I don't have the screenshots loaded on this machine, so it'll not load. But this is really useful because it shows you the screenshots of run A versus run B, and you can visually see what was the problem, and that really helps with the investigation. So I think that was all I had to show you with the vizzes. Going back to the deck. Okay, so at a high level, we've given you a quick walkthrough on some of the tools that we think are going to help you self-service and hopefully self-analyze some of these issues, so it makes troubleshooting much easier for you, as well as you feel comfortable enough to debug those issues. And maybe if you're one of those people that does not like to contact Tableau technical support and just wants to kind of go through those issues yourself and self-solve them, those tools are available and you can do that. We've also given you a glance and insight into how we use Tableau within Tableau. These are tools that are tried and tested. None of these tools were released. These were all tools that we developed within Tableau, have used them extensively to troubleshoot issues. We still use them for performance testing. When we do upgrade testing, Tableau technical support uses Logshark on a daily basis to resolve some of the customer support issues that are reported by all of you. So these are all tools that we love and use on a daily basis within Tableau, and we want to give you the same power that we have. So that's that. The remaining 3 slides, you don't have to take screenshots of this. There are handouts available in the front that you can grab, but basically it's a quick overview of everything that you need to know summarized in 3 slides. Like I said, all of these tools, this is literally a website that went live yesterday. It highlights all the, where's my click pointer? Yeah. Anyway, it's the IT tools webpage on tableau.com that kind of gives you a quick overview and the levels of support as well as identified over there. Here are some of the related sessions. So this was, again, a one-on-one talk. If you are interested in some of the detailed talks and some of the other tools, here are some sessions around Logshark and Scout and Replay that you may want to attend. I'll leave that slide up at the end. We're at time, so we'll open it up to question and answers. Oh, the workbook that we were demoing? No, that's not something that has a lot of internal data from a lot of our internal runs and performance runs. So that workbook we're not going to be sharing. But a lot of the tools have sample workbooks up there that you can go and, yeah.
So this is shipped with those templates for your own configuration?
Could you repeat that question? Sorry.
If you download those tools, those workbooks come with them?
So the ones that we showed you, we've run our own, performance runs, et cetera, and we've generated some of that data. But if you were to, for TabMon and Tabjolt, right, there are sample workbooks?
Yeah, so I'll just repeat the question really quick for anyone who couldn't hear. But the question was, do the workbooks come with the tools? And the answer for all of those is yeah. Yeah, I think Logshark comes with like 12 different workbooks. Most of them just come with one. Sir?
Are there any specific ports that would be open for these server tools to interact with Tableau?
Yeah, so the question was about specific ports. Do you have to open specific ports in your deployment to use these tools? The answer is it varies by tool. So typically you wouldn't have to manually open a port. Most of these are associated with like a tab admin setting that you would have to run. So for TabMon and Tabjolt, there's a JMX client metrics setting that you have to enable. And if you want to blend the data with what's in your Tableau Server repository, like I did in the TabMon demo, you have to enable the read-only user on your server. Beyond that, just on Scout, as Rahul mentioned, there's another tab admin setting, but those can all be found in the guide. You shouldn't need to go and manually punch any holes in your firewall.
Is there a tool to track the API access? So that's the people who connect from API and could cause some server issues. So we want to nail down all those API access or the access to the command line utilities like TabSafety. Is there a way to track or anything so I know, or what would be the best approach?
Yeah, so the question was, is there a technique for tracking who is using API calls against your server and tracking API access? So Logshark comes with a plugin called the Viz Portal plugin, and that will that'll build a data source for you with API access from like the REST API. So I would check out Logshark and the Viz Portal plugin specifically. I think tab command hits a lot of those same APIs that are governed by the Viz Portal process within Tableau. So I think that would be your kind of starting point for that.
In the back.
So if I'm using these tools against my production environment, live environment, will it impact my server performance? Because these are currently things
So the question was, if I run these tools against my production environment, will it affect the load? Most of these tools, I would say, would, like, especially for like Tabjolt and Scout, we would recommend not running against production environment because those are load testing tools. So it will impact performance, especially if it's during core business hours. Most of these, like troubleshooting tools like Logshark and all, they probably gather information. You can run them separately. But I wouldn't run some of the load testing tools on your production environment. They're mainly used for validating from going from pre-production to production.
Yeah. So,
actually, we have a scenario where we have to use Tabjolt against our production environment to test the web edit, web ordering workflows.
Okay.
So we should run it in off peak hours.
Yeah, if you don't want it to affect the performance of existing users, it will, yeah. I mean, depending on the amount of load you're putting on it, it's totally, yeah, it'll determine based on the load.
yeah. One thing I would add for Tabjolt specifically is that a virtual user in Tabjolt does not equal a human user of your Tableau server. Like a virtual user is just doing things as quickly as it possibly can, nonstop. So generally, like you don't want to throw too many virtual users at your server. So to follow up on that question, so TabMon, the tool that you kind of run continuously against your server, that's okay to run against a production environment. It's pretty lightweight. It's just reaching out and gathering things that are already exposed by the host every few minutes. So we haven't really noticed a performance impact there. The only thing I would caution is not running these tools on your production server. So most of these are set up so that you configure it on a VM or something outside of your server.
The same for Logshark, like, since hopefully you're setting it up on a separate box, which is not your Tableau Server box, all it's doing is processing logs, so you can, gather the logs separately at an off-peak hour and then run them through Logshark, even during peak hours, because it's not really affecting your Tableau Server load. Yeah, I would recommend not using it on production during core hours for load testing. Question?
So the question was kind of, can you stack all these tools on one machine, essentially? And I think the answer is yes, that's fine. There's no reason you couldn't use the same Postgres database for all of these tools. The only thing I would add is that if you're going to use Tabjolt to do some really heavy stress testing, it can tend to dominate performance on that box. So it could have an impact on the other tools like TabMon and kind of slow them down.
And just one caveat on that is we've not really tried all the tools on one box. So, take it with a grain of salt.
Yeah.
So the question is, do you have dedicated boxes for them? So yeah, we usually, for a lot of these tools, we have dedicated machines that are set up to run and execute these tools. So that would be a recommended best practice. Justin was saying, the organization structure. So we usually see the Tabjolt and the Scout tools that are used by the performance team, and they run that, on their bank of machines. And then Logshark is used typically by the Tableau technical support team. And our team hosts some of those machines that runs Logshark as a web service for them. So we don't share machines. So.
All right, any other questions? All right.
There are handouts for you to have in the front if you want to grab them. Thank you again for your time.
Yeah, thanks so much. Have an awesome TC.
Oh, and if you don't